so we're going to kick off our video about the incredible world of Turkey, starting with Homer. Homer is a Greek poet from ancient times, and he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And if you don't know what those are, both books are based around the Trojan War. Basically, the Trojan War breaks down like this. The Greeks and the Trojans were the two superpowers back in the day, and because of Helen of Troy running away with one of the princes, they got into a huge conflict where King Agamemnon sent a fleet of 1,000 ships, 50 men per ship. That's 50,000 soldiers to fight this battle. And not only that, but the Greeks had a super weapon on their side, basically a nuclear bomb, if you will, named Achilles, the world's greatest fucking soldier. Now, this dude was a bad motherfucker, and this is where you get the name Achilles' heel. His mom, who was a half god, had dipped him into a river and held him by his Achilles heel, so he was totally protected. He couldn't be hurt except for in his Achilles heel. Remember that scene in this movie? Was that fucking bad? We ran up there and stuck Boagrius with a knife just one time. We just hit him with a little short sword. That was fucking sick. Then you got the Trojan horse, of course. So they could not get through the walls of Troy. They couldn't beat down the gates, nothing. And so they thought of a plan of, pretending like they were defeated, building a wooden horse and hiding soldiers inside of it. And then when the Greeks, or when the Trojans pulled it into their city, they came out at night and fucked everybody up and let all the other Greeks in to come in there and kick some fucking ass. Well, this was an incredible story, but everyone thought this was just nothing more than a myth, a fairy tale, except for one man, Heinrich Schliemann. All right. Now, Heinrich Schliemann, he read the story and thought that this was telling an actual event. So he used the book as a guide and followed it. And at the end, guess what he found? He found the city of Troy. It was never a myth. It was true. It was real. The war happened. The place actually exists. So Homer wasn't just telling some fanciful tale. He was telling the truth. So it makes you think, how many other stories could actually be true? Well, when it comes to Turkey, there are plenty of them. Let's get into our next one, King Midas. Now, if you remember back from your school days, King Midas was the king with the golden touch. Anything he touched turned to gold. One day, a satyr with the god Dionysus, he got lost, and King Midas found him and let the satyr stay with them for 10 days, and then he returned the satyr to Dionysus, and the god, he was like the god of celebration and wine or whatever. Well, the god was so happy that he granted King Midas one wish, and being greedy as he was, the king wished that everything he touched turned to gold. Well, on his way back to his palace, he was just turning rocks and trees into gold, and he was so happy till he got to one of his servants and touched them, and they turned to gold. And then his own daughter ran up to see him, and he couldn't stop her, and she touched him, and she turned to gold. And then the food and water he tried to eat turned to gold instantly. He knew it was only a matter of time before he would starve to death or die of thirst. And he asked the god to take this curse off of him, which he went down to the river and washed himself off, and all the gold went into the sand, into the river. And from that day forward, King Midas would have nothing to do with gold or any kind of valuable stuff like that. And so he had given up on all the valuable jewels and gold and stuff like every other king has. He gave it all up. Well, it turns out that, in fact, King Midas was real, and he was a Phrygian king in Phrygia in ancient Turkey. And they found his tomb, and what's fascinating is that you would think, oh, this is King Midas, he's going to have all this gold and stuff in his tomb, right? No, he didn't have a single piece of gold, which I find interesting, because at the end of the story of King Midas, he gives up all the gold, and he doesn't want any gold or anything. And in fact, in his tomb, it's made of pure wood and metal and stuff. No gold anywhere, no silver, no gold, no jewels, diamonds, nothing. And he was a king. So not only was it based on a real person, but also based on at least a few real facts in real life, which is he gave up all his gold and stuff because in his tomb there was nothing ever found. It's just interesting, I think, that Turkey has incredible stories that we know about today, these that we think are myths, that turn out to be true. Now we're going to get into the biblical side of Turkey. So all the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all believe in the same God. I know a lot of people don't understand that, but it's true. Christians pray to the same God as Muslims pray to the same God as Jewish people. And it all started with this man, Abraham. Abraham is the patriarch for those three major religions. They all stem back to him, his word, and what he started, the belief in this one powerful God who would allow his seed to spread across the world or whatever. It all comes back to, so those three religions all stem back. People in those religions will pray and see him as a saint and a patriarch of their religion. They all see Abraham that way. He's the one who started it all. And what's interesting is Abraham, and in fact, if you don't know who Abraham is the one who God told to sacrifice his son, and he was about to do it when an angel came down and stopped him. So that's who Abraham is. But in fact, it is widely believed that Abraham was from southeastern Turkey. Isn't that interesting? The 7 churches of Revelation are all in the Aegean region of Turkey. 3 out of the 10 remaining icons of the world, according to beliefs of Orthodoxy, Jesus's cross on which he was crucified, are in a church in Turkey. But we're not done yet. In fact, the Virgin Mary, Jesus's mother, lived her last couple days before she died on a hill in Ephesus in Turkey. In fact, the oldest known church, the very first church in recorded history ever constructed, was built, guess where? Motherfucking Turkey. And if all of that wasn't enough, when God destroyed the world because of our sinful ways, sorry, that was probably my fault. When he destroyed the world with the flood and the deluge came, he left one family alive, Noah, the descendant of Abraham. And Noah and his family were left alive. He left him and his family alive to start the new generation of people. Where did Noah's Ark land? It landed in Mount Ararat. And where is Mount Ararat? Oh, well, you fucking guessed it. Who would have ever thought? It just happens to be in motherfucking Turkey. Another interesting fact is the Garden of Eden, which is the place where God breathed life into man and created man and woman, Adam and Eve. And there was a perfect garden for them with all the fruit-bearing trees and all the animals, and everything was absolutely perfect for them. It was this gorgeous, kick-ass fucking resort for those two to live in. And it's said that the Garden of Eden, that 4 rivers sprang from its head. So 4 rivers came from it. And we know 2 of those rivers are the Tigris and Euphrates that still exist today. And where do they start at? Where's the head of these rivers? Oh, well, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say fucking Turkey. Look at this place, dude. Tell me that's not the Garden of Eden. Come on, this place is fucking gorgeous. Look at some of their sunken cities and stuff off the Mediterranean. This place is fucking beautiful, man. I'm just saying, just throwing that one out there as well. Now, the oldest temple in the world's very first temple or megalithic construction, is Göbekli Tepe, which is in Turkey. And they date Göbekli Tepe to over 13,000 years ago. 13,000 years ago, this megalithic construction was created, which I find fascinating, which is why I believe that the cradle of civilization is in fact Turkey and not Iraq, not ancient Sumeria, or even though technically this would be Mesopotamia as well, not Iraq and Sumer and stuff, but Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, I think is evidence enough that should show us that this is the cradle of civilization. Not only that basically the Garden of Eden was most likely there, if the, and I mean, that's just, basing it off a biblical reference, not like I'm using that as a fact, but I'm just saying I think it adds credence and credibility to the idea that the cradle of civilization is in fact Turkey. Look at some of the iconography and stuff on here on these pillars. You have like extinct species and stuff like that. Look at the lion. Make sure you guys remember this lion. All right. Now these T-shaped pillars are incredible. Some are 10, 20 tons. I mean, these things are huge, and they carved them out of solid pieces. And what's interesting is they're not just some T-shaped pillar. They are in fact people. They are carved out to look like people and the builders of Göbekli Tepe. And you can see the designs of them, and you can even see what the people of Göbekli Tepe look like, I guess, in a sense at least, the depiction of themselves. Now you can see right there, you can see his hands going around his waist like that. You can see like this kind of belt structure with, well, if I was a part of third phase of Moon or Secure Team 10, I would say this part right here is obviously the aliens' 3 penises. But since I'm not a moron, I would say it's some kind of a dress, a flap for him, like some kind of warrior getup. Anyway, now you can see right there the dude is clearly grabbing his penis in his ball sack, apparently. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but you see the same shape that he's making, his hands going around his waist and stuff like that. You look at the thing on his chest. I mean, come on, you guys. That's a fucking alien. I'm just saying. Look, if there ever was an alien, that's him. But that's what they look like. So I mean, these guys, 13,000 years ago. So this is 7,000 years before the very first civilization existed. These guys were building this stuff, and I would assume that they would have to have some kind of a civilization if they're constructing a temple. It's not like it's one family. Okay, I could say if it's one family doing it, sure, then they're not technically a civilization. It's just one smart or crazy family, whatever. But this is like a huge temple. The complex to Göbekli Tepe is huge. So that's where I'm basing this a lot of my theories off of. But Göbekli Tepe isn't the only place. They say, okay, if that was just a one-off shoot, fine. But it's in fact not. Let's take a look at this place. Now, the city of Hasan Keyf is another city, a lot of people just don't know about it, is 12,000 years old. And the only reason people are paying attention to it now is because it's about to be completely flooded, and it's going to displace everybody there, and it's going to destroy the entire city because they're building a dam, which is 80. Yeah, that's right. This is Batman. That's a place out there in Turkey. There's a city called Batman. Fucking awesome. But anyway, yeah. Now this city is dated 12,000 years ago. So I'm just saying, you got one city that's dated 13,000 years ago. You got another city that's dated 12,000 years ago, and yet they say the first civilization was built 7,000 years after that. Doesn't make any sense to me. Now let's get into another subject. Language. Where did the first language come from? What was the first spoken language that ancient people spoke to each other in order to communicate verbally? Where did it come from? Well, we have some researchers to give us a hint on that. Let's take a look, but I'm going to go ahead and make a guess. Let's see if I'm right, all right? Let's take a look. Oh, mother of many modern languages traced to ancient motherfucking Turkey. What the fuck, people? What the fuck? Look at that. You see what I'm saying? We've got to fucking put the evidence together and accept it for what it is and just not ignore it because we are stuck on some older beliefs that we don't want to let go of. But we can, in fact, trace that the first languages come from ancient Turkey. So the first people who could speak to each other came from motherfucking Turkey. I'm going to fucking go crazy. This is making me insane. How can nobody else notice this stuff? I don't know what's wrong with academia, but I'm just saying we have got to sit down and put the evidence together and look at it with an open mind and stop worrying about what some archaeologist said in the 1800s, because he didn't have the same information that we have today. And so we have to change our views and understanding of evidence when new evidence is brought forward. Now, like, look at this evidence. So this is a discovery made by Andrew Collins, who I absolutely love. I think he's great. He's a great writer and everything, great investigator. And they found at the Turkish museum a bone fragment that had some carvings on it, some inscriptions, which they believe is the first symbols, first iconography or whatever that symbolizes Göbekli Tepe. And so you can see it kind of looks like the T-shaped pillars in there, it's like, I mean, it slightly resembles them, but it's kind of hard because the shapes, they really don't look like they match. They like kind of go off, like how they go off to the side and stuff like that, like pieces over here, it looks close. It looks closer, right? However, I made a discovery. Yes, me, UFO proof, Kyle, made a discovery about Göbekli Tepe, which I believe I found the actual first symbol that is, or first sign that symbolizes Göbekli Tepe. So in Kazakhstan, in this lake, they found a bunch of ancient pottery from an ancient lost city or whatever. And these guys, and this is like, thousands of miles away or whatever, or hundreds of miles away. It's in Kazakhstan. But there's this one piece, and I'm looking at this piece, and when I was looking at it, I was like, I think that they're looking at it wrong, and I flipped it over because they're looking at it like that. So that's the way they're reading it. And I was like, no, I think if we flip it over and we look at it the other way around, what does it look like? Motherfucking Göbekli Tepe, right? I mean, come on, you can't deny that. And then look at the circles around it that have the dividing lines through it. That looks exactly like Göbekli Tepe. I mean, the T-shaped pillars match with the symbols on top and the concentric circles and the rings around it. So I believe I had discovered the first symbol, the first piece of art that depicts Göbekli Tepe. And although I love Andrew Collins, I gotta say that I believe I am correct on this, and that my symbol looks 10 times more likelier to represent Göbekli Tepe than that little bone fragment does. I mean, it actually matches it. You don't have to have any kind of like imagination with it. I mean, can you deny that? So I think I did a pretty good job on that one. I come across that article in Siberian Times. It was really cool. But when I first saw it, I was like, man, that really, I'm like, because I could only see it from one direction. I had to tilt my head, and I was like, man, I think that's like a thing that reminds me of Göbekli Tepe. And I just, it's funny that the people who discovered it hadn't put that together. No one had put those two pieces together. But I, in fact, do believe I am right about that. But perhaps I am a little bit biased because it's me. So I'll just let you guys be the judge on that one. But I vote me. Next, we come to Mount Nemrut and the Hittites. Now, the Hittites were a civilization that was mentioned in the Bible. Really, other than that, there's not much mention of them. And not too much is actually mentioned about them in the Bible. But we do know that they were a real civilization. So they were one of the first like civilizations like that is recorded anyway, because it's recorded in the Bible. So these guys, they go way back. Now, there's some interesting parallels and stuff that I found with Mount Nemrut and a couple other things, and we're going to touch on those right now. Now, this is the city of Hattusha and their king, Suppiluliuma. Now, Suppiluliuma, he wanted people to believe that he was this half man, half lion. Like he had a lion motif that went on everything. As you can see, the gates there covered with lions and stuff. And so, and they were like one of the first people to start like the Sphinx and stuff, I believe. All right. So when you see any of the lion motifs anywhere else, I believe that it stems from these guys. And you can see them in all over the place. You can see different, lion motifs with that show a parallel back to the Hittites. Now this is from Turkey and Eusephus, okay, and this is in Baalbek, Lebanon. See, you can even see like the similarities between the two, but it's really the lion iconography that really like gets it for me. I believe that the people, because no one really knows who built the original Baalbek or whatever, the giant megalithic structures there, and I believe that it is in fact people from Turkey that had expanded outside of Turkey and built all over the place. And then obviously later in time, the Romans or whoever, Greeks or whoever, would come in and add their own stuff to it. But I believe at first it was a civilization that came out of Turkey, and they were the ones who could build these giant megalithic structures. Now this is a picture of the Trilithon. The Trilithon is 3 stones that are the largest stones ever used for construction. And there's not a crane on Earth that can lift weights anywhere near what the Trilithon stones weigh. We don't have a crane in the world that can do it. We have no idea how it was done. We have a couple of theories on it, but these theories require so much incredible work to move it literally an inch. And I mean literally. They're talking using all these pulleys and levers and everything, and oxen and all kinds of animals and men, and just thousands of men and everything, and that's to lift it up and move it an inch. Okay, but that has nothing to do with lifting it in the air, which is what they did. They lifted it over 25 feet in the air. We have no idea how they did it. And what I think is really neat is, I mean, this place looks like a place for fucking giants. I mean, look at the size of that door. Are you kidding? Who the fuck needs a door that fucking big? I mean, Jesus Christ, that thing is huge. And now take a look at this place in Turkey. Doesn't that look like the temple of Bacchus over in Baalbek, Lebanon? Or look at this door. Doesn't that look like the giant door in Baalbek, Lebanon? Of course, these are in Turkey. Now, pay attention here. Look at the design. See the square holes and everything and the way it's designed. And look at this place. This is the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, all right? And this is the famous stone of the east or whatever that they couldn't move. They put it in there, and the Jews are real happy about this. They're very proud of this stone because the armies that came to destroy it couldn't move that stone, so they left it. But now take a look at Lebanon. Now, is that interesting or what? That the same thing, the same kind of construction, whereas in Lebanon they have like the Trilithon, the bigger stones are actually on top of smaller stones. And you see the same thing in Jerusalem. And I think that the builders of Lebanon also helped build Jerusalem. And I believe those builders all stem from Turkey. But now I want to go back to Mount Nemrut. Now this is a relief of King Antikythus and Hercules. And just showing them shaking hands, that they're, like he's friends with the gods or whatever. Now, what I want you to notice is take a look at his hat, his headpiece. Do you notice the pyramids on top of it? In this photo and the last one, he's got these pyramids, these spikes on top of his hat. Now, I found another correlation with another place that I think you guys might find interesting. Now, this is Petra in Jordan. And yes, this is the same place at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, all right? You guys remember that one part on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade where they get in the plane, they drop from the plane, from the blimp, and the dad is shooting with the gun, and he like shoots the tail off, and Indiana Jones is like, "Oh, Dad, are we hit?" And Dad's like, "Oh, more or less, son, I'm sorry. They got us," and he blamed it on the Nazis for shooting them. That shit was fucking hilarious. Anyway, back to the point. Okay, but this is Jordan in Petra, or Petra in Jordan, I mean, and this is Turkey. I mean, you can see the same kind of correlations there. They both cut into the rock face and everything. So, I mean, that's one thing. But then check this out. Now, this place is back in Turkey. And notice how they both have the same split roof design. Is that crazy or what? Now, this is also in Petra and Jordan. And does it not look like a UFO right there? I'm just throwing that out there. But anyway, check this shit out. Remember this from our last guy? Look at his hat and look at the pyramid shapes up there. I mean, I think there's definitely a correlation there, you guys. Now we've reached Cappadocia. Cappadocia is a place famous for its rock stone cut houses. Dwellings that are cut directly into these giant spikes of stone that are sticking up from the sky. They're actually eroded pieces of limestone and other types of stone that are eroded away from winds and water damage. But the people still actually live in these dwellings today. They still, the people in Turkey still live there. But the thing that's interesting is nobody knows who made these. These are the famous fairy chimneys is what they're called. But no one knows who made them, like carved them out. People have been living in them for thousands of years, but there are no records. But what's even cooler than what's the fairy chimneys is what's underneath Cappadocia. And that is all the underground cities like Derinkuyu. Derinkuyu here, you see that's a depiction of it, can hold over 20,000 people. 20,000 men, women, and children could live inside of Derinkuyu. That's how much room it is. That's how big it is. I mean, it's an incredible feat of engineering, but there's so many mysteries about it that we simply don't have the answers to. We have no idea who built it or when it was built. There are theories that are based on absolutely no evidence. So it's just some scholar saying, well, this seems like it should be around here, or this might make sense with it. But there is no evidence proving anything about who built Derinkuyu, because even the people who lived there had no idea who built it. Look at these stone doors. I mean, these things are amazing. They can only be opened from one side, and they're thousands of pounds, but it only takes one person to close them. But from the other side, an entire army couldn't open those doors, lifting it. And then, like, the people who built Derinkuyu had a lot of mysterious things about their construction. Like, they knew how to add their pillar strength and stuff. But not only that, the Derinkuyu goes 13 stories underground. It's over 85 meters deep, and it has air to every single room. There are over 15,000 ventilation shafts drilled into the rock down to every single room, so every single room has fresh air and also fresh water to prevent them from being poisoned by anybody. They had access to a well and stuff. So I mean this is incredible, but just as simple things. How did they drill out the air shafts? Now you tell me. There's these little, couple inch wide air shafts going to every room, 15,000 of them. How did they drill those out with ancient tools? Did they have a long 85-meter drill bit? Or did they have a little man who was 2 inches tall with a chisel? Which one is it? That's what I'd like to know, because they were able to do that. But how? So go ahead, think of a method for me. How did they do it? How do you drill 85 meters, twisting and turning, and in ancient times? Now, this is all supposed to be done by hand. This is well before any kind of machinery. So what do you think it is? Fuck, you got me, man. But isn't that incredible? And as incredible as Derinkuyu is, it was only discovered in 1965. It's been lost for thousands of years. As incredible that it is, it's not alone. In fact, there are 36 underground cities in Turkey. 36 of them in Turkey. Everybody lived underground in Turkey for some reason. That was like the thing to do. I'm not sure why. But another thing that's amazing is that there is none of the excavation left over from Derinkuyu. They pulled out hundreds of thousands of square meters of material, and it is completely gone. It's not in the valley below or anywhere near. So what did they do with it all? What would be the point of it? And a lot of the rooms, they don't even have an idea how they created the rooms to begin with. You see like chisel marks on the side, but then there's a lot of rooms that are created that have zero chisel marks, and they're like, how did they don't, there's no evidence for how they were created. Now we get to their writing styles and some of the more stuff that we have evidence for. So this relief here, the stele or whatever, is actually the Rosetta Stone of cuneiform script. So did you ever wonder how we deciphered cuneiform? How are we able to read ancient cuneiform texts like Sumerian and stuff? It's because of this. This is the Rosetta Stone of cuneiform text, where there was 3 different languages. It's written in 3 different languages, and one of the languages we know of. This is actually a stele by Xerxes. You know, the dude from fucking Last Stand of the 300? Yeah, so thanks to him, we were able to translate cuneiform text. And what's interesting is one of these writings comes from Turkey. All right, so Turkey wrote in cuneiform script and shit, just like the ancient Sumerians. And this, like, you look here, you say, oh, this is Sumerian. Obviously, there's the winged disc and everything. Wrong. This is from Turkey. These guys are Sumerians. All right, they're really distinctive. You can see by their dress, the style of clothes that they wear. They are in fact Sumerians. This is a dead giveaway. See, like the leaf dress, they were not very advanced. I mean, even though we say they were advanced, they looked like they were fucking straight out of the fucking bush. All right, they wear like these grass skirts and shit. None of them wear any shirts or any armor or anything like that. Fucking nothing spectacular. But on the other side, when it comes to Turkey, these guys were far more superior than the Sumerians, and we know this because they have actually battled each other and fought many wars. And when the Sumerians fought the Hittites or the Sea people or any of the people from Turkey, they were decimated. They were completely destroyed. They didn't have a chance. You can see the people from Turkey. They were attacking them, the Sumerians and stuff, in siege machines. They already had the wheel. They already had a machine that could break down their castles, their defenses, their ziggurats, anything. They already had machines that could do that. That these siege machines would pull up next to their fortress and bash away at the walls, letting the men in. And look, you can see in this scene here where they have the enemies impaled on giant spikes, and the Turkish army is coming in, shooting bows and arrows at them, hiding behind a shield, like a wooden shield, on some kind of siege machine that pulls up with wheels to break down their fortress, their fortifications. Their other men are over there. They even shows images of the men underground who are also being slaughtered and massacred because they are nothing to these guys. These guys were the fucking shit. Now, what's interesting is this is a relief that was found in Turkey, in Anatolia, and it depicts people back in the days of the first kings or whatever, so pre-Diluvian. And then this is also a pic, but this is from Sumeria, of Sumerians, and how the pre-Diluvian people were different. And I just wanted to point this out because both societies had this going for them. I just thought I'd like to point out that over on the Hitashu side, on the Hittite side or the Phrygian side, they were obviously big as elephants, but they also had dogs with human heads, like pets. And it's like, okay, well, that's probably fucking bullshit, but sure, that's fine. But then when you look over at the Sumerian one, you see that they had dogs. They had dog heads with human bodies. So I mean, that's just fascinating that they had these chimera that were pre-Diluvian. So when you see societies that were doing, I mean, isn't that just the least bit odd? Don't you guys think? I just figured I would throw that in there. On to something new now. All right, next we have the Istanbul Rocket Man. Now, this piece was discovered by Zachariah Sitchin, and he said it was a man inside a rocket. There you can see like his arms and his legs like kind of curled. His like hands are clasped over his knees, and he's like kind of bunched up in he claimed to be a space suit. And while I was looking at this, I realized that they were looking at it wrong. And when I flipped it the right side up, I could see it was something else. It was a work in progress of Mount Nemrut. Now you can see at the top of the hat there, you can see the base of the brim. You can see the scoring lines. So it's like they're even made in the same fashion. Look at the back panel of where the headpiece would be. I mean, you can see that matches up, like the beard and everything. This is a work in progress, and it is a copy of Mount Nemrut, or some of the royal figures of Mount Nemrut. Now, obviously, Mount Nemrut is in Turkey, and this piece right here was found in Turkey. So to think there's not a match there is fucking ridiculous. Then we have the Titus Tunnel. Now, this was claimed that it was built by Emperor Titus, one of the Roman emperors, and his father. And what's interesting is that it was supposedly started by Vespasian, all right, Emperor Vespasian, and his reign was 69 AD to 79 AD, so he reigned like 10 years, all right. So he started it in 69 AD, and then his son took it over from 79 to 81, and then their successors finally got it completed in during the reign of Antonius Pius, all right, which was 138 through 161 AD. So it was started in 69 AD and it ended in 161 AD. So it took them almost 100 years to carve this little tunnel out for a diversion of water. I mean, and that's what they claim. I mean, they don't have like a record of it. That's just what they believe happened because they saw the names of Vespasian and Titus carved onto the tunnel or whatever. But that could have came at any time, you know, for whatever reason. Maybe they just claimed it and named it that tunnel, even it was already there. Because I just find it interesting that, you know, they say it took the Romans over 100 years to carve that out. Well, what about Derinkuyu? So how long did it take to carve out Derinkuyu? Because no one's going to carve out a underground city that's going to take your people, you know, 3 or 4 generations that you won't even be alive to use it. So it doesn't make any sense. Why? Like, how would you know if you're going to need it? How would you know if your great-great-great-grandson is even going to need that tunnel? Maybe your great-great-great-grandson is ruling everybody. Who knows? And now I also want to discuss this. Now, the fact is they say that the Sumerians were the inventors of the wheel. They were the first civilization and they invented the wheel. However, I would just like to point out that this stone toy car was found in Turkey and it's dated 7,500 years. That's 1,500 years older than the Sumerians. These guys had the wheel thousands of years before the Sumerians did. I mean, this is clear as day evidence. If academia wants to accept their own dating, then this predates the Sumerians by 1,500 years. That the people in Turkey, had the wheel first. And what's interesting is, I like these what look like the cart ruts of Malta, almost. Now they do remind me of like the glacier scarring. So I mean, it does look really similar to that. But then you see some of the tracks, they really look like fucking tracks. It just doesn't make sense that a glacier would do that, especially when you compare it to like, you know, like glacier cutting and stuff. So this is what natural like glacier scarring looks like, and it does look similar to, I believe anyway, that it looks similar to the so-called cart ruts of Turkey. I definitely could see some correlations there. With some of the tracks, it really looks next to impossible for glacier scarring to be the reason for it. However, most likely that's probably the answer. But I mean, when you look at some of the other evidence that goes along with the tracks and everything, I mean, it's really hard to make that case. I mean, now look at that. Now, are you gonna say that this is caused from glacier scarring? I mean, come on. I mean, you gotta be retarded to think that. I mean, that's anything other than man-made somehow. You know what the fuck it is, but I mean, to think that that's like naturally made by nature, you're fucking stupid. Or don't forget to check out our main guy Ben over at Rudder Nation. He designed UFO Proof. He's my partner. He does all the technical shit. I do all the entertainment stuff, and he's the one who created UFO Proof, real UFO Proof. So and also don't forget, this is where we do our hangouts, like we just did our live YouTube broadcast. We do it from here. So if you want to come and join us, go to the website, sign up, and that's where the link will be for you guys to come and join me live on YouTube via Google Hangouts. Just look at our new website, man. This is like a total. It's like a Facebook for UFO enthusiasts. You know, with your dashboard, everyone comments, posts whatever kind of media they want. It's fucking awesome. So make sure you go and check that out. You can also get any of my gear through my website by going up to the UFO warehouse link. And this is our newest design out, UFO Proof Fight the Power. On back it says, I'll roundhouse that motherfucker. Yes, I will. So I forget who gave me the idea for that. I'm pretty sure it was Sean McGuire. So thank you for that. You better buy one of these then. But it's a clever idea and I liked it. So that's up. So go and check that out. And stuff in his tomb, right? No, he didn't have a single piece of gold, which I find interesting because at the end of the story of King Midas, he gives up all the gold and he doesn't want any gold or anything. And in fact, in his tomb, it's made of pure wood and metal and stuff. No gold anywhere, no silver, no gold, no jewels, diamonds, nothing. And he was a king. So not only was it based on a real person, but also based on at least a few real facts in real life, which is he gave up all his gold and stuff because in his tomb there was nothing ever found. It's just interesting, I think, that Turkey has these incredible stories that we know about today, these that we think are myths, that turn out to be true. Now we're going to get into the biblical side of Turkey. So all the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all believe in the same God. I know a lot of people don't understand that, but it's that he granted King Midas one wish. And being greedy as he was, the king wished that everything he touched turned to gold. Well, on his way back to his palace, he was just turning rocks and trees into gold, and he was so happy till he got to one of his servants and touched them, and they turned to gold. And then his own daughter ran up to see him, and he couldn't stop her, and she touched him, and she turned to gold. And then the food and water he tried to eat turned to gold instantly. He knew it was only a matter of time before he would starve to death or die of thirst. And he asked the god to take this curse off of him. which he had went down to the river and washed himself off, and all the gold went into the sand into the river. And from that day forward, King Midas would have nothing to do with gold or any kind of valuable stuff like that. And so he had given up on all the valuable jewels and gold and stuff like every other king has. He gave it all up. Well, it turns out that, in fact, King Midas was real, and he was a Phrygian king in Phrygia in ancient Turkey. And they found his tomb, and what's fascinating is that you would think, oh, this is King Midas. He's going to have all this gold, except for one man, Heinrich Schliemann. All right. Now, Heinrich Schliemann, he read the story and thought that this was telling an actual event. So he used the book as a guide and followed it. And at the end, guess what he found? He found the city of Troy. It was never a myth. It was true. It was real. The war happened. The place actually exists. So Homer wasn't just telling some fanciful tale. He was telling the truth. So it makes you think, how many other stories could actually be true? Well, when it comes to Turkey, there are plenty of them. Let's get into our next one, King Midas. Now, if you remember back from your school days, King Midas was the king with the golden touch. Anything he touched turned to gold. One day, a satyr with the god Dionysus, he got lost, and King Midas found him and let the satyr stay with them for 10 days, and then he returned the satyr to Dionysus, and the god, he was like the god of celebration and wine or whatever. Well, the god was so happy, Memnon sent a fleet of 1,000 ships, 50 men per ship. That's 50,000 soldiers to fight this battle. And not only that, but the Greeks had a super weapon on their side, basically a nuclear bomb, if you will, named Achilles, the world's greatest fucking soldier. Now, this dude was a bad motherfucker, and this is where you get the name Achilles' heel. His mom, who was a half god, had dipped him into a river and held him by his Achilles heel, so he was totally protected. He couldn't be hurt except for in his Achilles heel. Remember that scene in this movie? Was that fucking bad? We ran up there and stuck Boagrius with a knife just one time. We just hit him with a little short sword. That was fucking sick. Then you got the Trojan horse, of course. So they could not get through the walls of Troy. They couldn't beat down the gates, nothing. And so they thought of a plan of, pretending like they were defeated, building a wooden horse and hiding soldiers inside of it. And then when the Greeks, or when the Trojans pulled it into their city, they came out at night and fucked everybody up and let all the other Greeks in to come in there and kick some fucking ass. Well, this was an incredible story, but everyone thought this was just nothing more than a myth, a fairy tale. Alright, so we're going to kick off our video about the incredible world of Turkey, starting with Homer. Homer is a Greek poet from ancient times, and he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And if you don't know what those are, both books are based around the Trojan War. Basically, the Trojan War breaks down like this. The Greeks and the Trojans were the two superpowers back in the day, and because of Helen of Troy running away with one of the princes, they got into a huge conflict where King Agamemnon